Testing.
Test 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
Okay.
You've been doing this more than I have.
Yeah, I know. So,
Welcome to the Healing House podcast.
welcome to the Healing House podcast.
This is your host,
This
Patty.
Leave me alone.
Okay, but seriously,
Okay.
how are we doing this? Because I don't know.
Okay, so I'm here with Eric. Hi, I'm Patty. We'll be just talking about my experience at the VIPASSANA meditation retreat that I just did. VIPASSANA, just to explain what it was a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I wasn't in a swimming pool and journaling my feelings. There was no journal or swimming pool. I also was sitting in meditation for about 9 to 10 hours a day, seated, and then some part of that wasn't moving or doing your best to not change your posture. So there's a lot of things that came up and still feel like I'm integrating. I came back February 5th. So it's only been a few weeks and I feel like my life is already kind of changing and falling apart, but in a lot of ways falling together. And I owe it to this 10 days with my mind.
That's a good explanation of what that is. Because I didn't know what a Vipassana was until you said something, or you said you were going on this retreat. I was like, oh, so like yoga, but it's not.
No, I wasn't allowed to do yoga, actually. I wasn't allowed to. So you're not allowed to, or try not to. I mean, people do try to break the rules because they just simply cannot sit with themselves.
Are there like cameras in these rooms?
There's no cameras. It's
no yoga.
They have donation based center, so you donate at the end of every retreat. Those donations go to these Vipassana centers all over the world, so they're designed for these retreats. They have meditation halls, they have a dining hall, they have dorms, but they provide you a bed, one little closet, a bathroom that was shared with another female. They segregate female and male. Shady can come, get sit.
We know who she wants to sit.
Yeah. You're really not distracting yourself at all. And they don't even really want you to look at other people or try to distract them from their own process, because everyone's kind of going through something in their own body. Your body's your experiment throughout the process.
So what, I guess, how did you hear about it, one, and what called you to decide to take that journey?
I think about five years ago, I was, going through a lot of anxiety and depression. My life was changing, and I just wanted to get rid of it and those feelings. I remember coming across a YouTube video of some woman saying, this Vipassana retreat helped my anxiety, and I was like, ooh, clickbait. And I listened to it, and she talked about, meditating for 10 hours a day for 10 days. She was seeing sparkles in the snow, and they came alive, and it felt like nature was super conscious. She was really able to see things more clearly, and I was like, oh, I want to try that. So it's been on my bucket list.
It's called sleep deprivation.
I did not sleep. Oh my God. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So I had it on my bucket list, but then I'd get to the point where I would go to the website to apply, because you do have to apply for this, and you do have to fill out a form that you're not mentally unwell. And and you do have to report any medication. They really try to make sure that you're not going to freak out when you're there. So I'd get to that point, and then I would always back out. I'm like, I don't know, it'll happen. I don't know if now's the right time. But I finally, in November, I applied and I just sent it. It was the closest one in Washington. And they told me I was number 20 on the wait list, and I got accepted 2 weeks before. So I had to make a decision really fast. And it felt like the right thing to do at the time.
Yeah, I didn't know there was such a selection process. I thought that you could just sign up for one of these things, and so I think it's a good thing that they're
No.
at least trying to decipher what people are going through in the
Mm-hmm.
process before you go into this situation that is probably going to expand you a little bit.
Before I had applied, I made the mistake. If you are interested in Vipassana, I wouldn't listen to anyone's story before going in,
Mm.
because I
Like
didn't
testimonials.
I didn't apply yet, and I had been listening to Tim Ferriss podcast while I was running one day. This was like last year, and he was talking about having a trauma come up. It came to the forefront of his mind every time he closed his eyes, and it was just on repeat at a high velocity. I remember thinking, like, I don't know what would come up for me, and I don't know if I can put myself in that position. I did Google the Vipassana Center, and there was just one old review like 13 years ago where some squad unit took this woman out of there, and I was like, ah, shit, that's probably going to be me. And
Mm.
so that definitely came up in the retreat when I felt like leaving on day 4.
Do a lot of people leave
It
before the end?
is common that you at least think about it around day 4, day 5 gets pretty difficult. And I certainly was this close to knocking on the teacher's door and being like, I can't do this
Mm.
on day 4. So, but everyone there stayed on my retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kept you from
I'm
knocking on the
going.
door?
Yeah. The first 3 days, you practice anapana, which is watching the sensation of your nose. The gong rings at 4 a.m. You have till 4:30 to get into the meditation hall. You have a choice of being in the hall or being in your room. I had a hard time meditating in my room because I just get distracted by whatever I could come up with, even though there was nothing in the room to even be distracted by.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd get myself up, I'd go to the hall, I'd meditate for 2 hours, then you would eat breakfast at 6:30. Then you meditated 9 to 9:30 with instruction. They would play a recording from the old teacher who built a lot of these centers
In the room.
in the hall.
Oh.
Took a break for lunch, which was your biggest meal, and then you could go on a recess. You could have an interview with one of the meditation teachers if you wanted to. And you meditated again, took a break, tiny break for a bathroom, meditated again, had dinner, but dinner was actually fruit and tea. The old students who have done this before, they just were to have tea. So you were also kind of fasting. So it got to the point where around day 3, I had meditated about 10 hours a day for 3 days. I had felt good about it. And then I think it hit me that I had 7 more days left. I had gone to bed. I had a nightmare night 3 into day 4. It was about it was just the worst nightmare. Someone accused me of murder and I didn't do it, and there was a pure form of fear in my body. And I had woke up with like my stomach in knots. Couldn't hold anything down. Breakfast was always oatmeal and cafeteria food, and none of it seemed appetizing to me. And so I lost some weight from that retreat. I went immediately to the hall to sign up for one of the interviews. I didn't have an interview yet for a couple of days. Oh, I need to talk to somebody. Like, this is awful. I can't do this for 7 more days. So I go into the meditation hall, and there's a huge sign at 4 or 6:30, whatever the breakfast was. And it says, day 4, Vipassana day. There will be no interviews.
Mm.
And I'm like, fuck. At that point is when the anxiety got worse because I felt stuck in my body with what I was feeling. I think it did buy me another day just because I wanted to wait to have an interview the next day. What ended up happening was I just became increasingly more anxious to go to sleep at night because I was having nightmares. So I'd be okay during my sits. I would sit down in meditation, and I was able to sort of find my breath, watch the breath. But then when I came out of a sit or a meditation sit for an hour, that's when the mind would rush, was in between sits in transition. I
I mean, just fasting for that kind of
God, dude,
amount of
yeah.
time can really do some pretty
Wild
profound
things.
things to your body
Yeah.
alone, and your mind is a little bit sharper.
Yeah.
So, that paired with forced meditation essentially on your own is a recipe for some wild
Yeah. And
experiences, I would say.
I had some experience with seated meditation, silent, but it was only an hour I did on a retreat once a day.
Mm.
I certainly hadn't sat for 10 hours, 1 hour at a time. But I think that the meditations were actually, I was looking forward to sitting because I was having less anxiety during the sits because there was people surrounding me. I was watching the sensation. I had something to do essentially, even though that's not the point of meditation.
Mm.
But when I was on my own to take a walk or go eat food, that's when my mind started to bother me,
Mm.
or I would get pretty scared of the intensity of the anxiety in the body.
Did you
And
find
then,
that as time went on that those things got easier?
yeah, yeah. So
And was that attributed to sitting or meditating for that amount of time that
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I kind of just had to hang on
yeah.
because when I waited for day 4, I went in to talk to the teacher. Females have a female teacher, males have a male teacher. And she was like this old lady on a blanket. It was so sweet. And I came right into the room. She's like, come on, have a sit. And I'm like, I'm having a hard time. I'm having so much anxiety and I don't know what to do.
And
And
what did she say?
she just was like, yes, yes. That's just the mind storms coming in. That's so expected. That's why, it's set up in this way that there isn't any distraction so that you can sit with it and you can learn to switch your awareness to the sensation of your nose, which is more subtle than any other sensation happening in the body.
Hmm.
But you have to make that subtle sensation your primary focus rather than your leg falling asleep. Your mind's going to want to immediately go to the anxiety and go to something painful happening in your body. But if you can become aware of it, notice it, and then gently bring it back to the sensation of the nose, that's where you really, train your mind to come back to center and come back to more of a peaceful state. So over time, I was getting more anxious at nighttime because I knew I had to go to bed, and it was just my whole nervous system knew that was the scariest time was nighttime for me. So it got to the point where I could feel cortisol just shoot up in my body as soon as the lights went off. Fuck, I'm gonna be like this for 8 hours. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna run out of the room. I'm gonna have to call my cousin who lived in Seattle to pick me up. I thought of the whole scenario. I'm gonna have to run out of here, maybe go for a walk at night. They're going to think I'm crazy if I'm walking around at night. I might have to knock on her door and bother her while she's sleeping. Got so nervous. And all I had was to sit up in my bed and watch my breath. I guess that's the beauty of it. It just was a terror at the time, and it took me about 2 to 3 hours to fall asleep.
Mm.
And sitting up in my bed, I didn't have a journal, I didn't have my phone, and I told her that. She's like, what would you normally grab? And I said, I'd probably grab my phone to listen to a guided meditation, which ended up being my band-aid, I
Mm.
realized, because I wasn't truly going into my body to look at the sensations and observe them. I was just putting on people talking at home when I
Mm.
would deal with any sort of.
Which takes you out.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that guided meditation, not all guided meditations, I think that they're helpful and they're a tool, but I do think that it can also become a distraction. And that's certainly what I was doing
Yeah,
for a
I
long
mean, I
time.
think there are circumstances where we have to get out of our bodies, right?
Yeah.
For super anxious or hyperventilating, we need something for the mind to focus on outside of the
Yeah.
internal world, right? So an external distraction like guided meditation is probably a healthy method of doing that, but I don't think that was the purpose of what you were going through there.
No, they didn't want you also. They made it very clear no need to visualize, which again, that technique can be very helpful, but they just wanted you to give this a chance of just being nakedly with you and yourself.
Mm.
Because ultimately, that's the direct path to being at peace. If you can use these other, techniques to get to the same thing. They're all different vehicles, but it is the most direct and probably the hardest to just sit simply with your body in silence and watch everything go on.
And in today's day and age, we don't ever have that opportunity.
No.
There's no time
No.
or place to really sit with with yourself. People say, well, I can go to a retreat in the jungle. Well, I was just in the jungle for a very long time, and there's a lot of external stimulus out there. So you're not necessarily sitting with yourself out there, and it's very visceral.
I noticed that I was noticing that I was turning things into distraction, even the simplest things that were there. There was one night where my suitcase was torn apart, and they have a volunteer room where people donate things that you need, like an extra blanket or a sheet if you forgot it, towels, whatever. And I found this little sewing kit. I made it into an activity on one of my breaks to take the sewing kit. So my suitcase, which is fine. I definitely turned it into an activity because I was bored and I just was sick of meditating by day 8. But I'll tell you, that was the funnest thing I've ever done. Was sitting down and I had the lamp like turned on the suitcase, and sewing has never been so intriguing in my life because it's something I was actually doing out of that entire time of doing nothing.
That's interesting. That's like almost like a little side effect maybe of finding like true joy in life's small monotonous things.
Yeah, I was cleared out. There was nothing else to do, that I could see the beauty in something small like sewing. Even going outside, and in Washington, it's cold and rainy right now. There was bare trees with nothing on them. And normally, coming from San Diego or living in San Diego, everything's bright and sunny and there's palm trees everywhere. So at first I didn't notice any of the nature and didn't really think it was cool or special. About halfway through, I remember having this really eye-opening experience going out for the walk, and the bare trees were so fascinating to me. I just sat and watched them, just the structure of how they are and the grass. And I went 4-leaf clover hunting every once in a while, and that was the funnest thing for me to do in my break. And then everything felt really, I think I realized that everything was really conscious. Oh, even the grass and the trees, even though the trees don't have any leaves on it and it's seemingly dead and not pretty, it's alive. And I remember looking at the clouds, and half the sky was cloudy and the other half was clear. And I'm like, those are like my thoughts. I'm the sky. And when it's cloudy, I think I'm only this. But if I take a step back, it's the entire picture. And I was having these little metaphorical realizations with nature just because there was nothing to distract me.
This is reminding me of a podcast that I listened to, and it's prison inmates who are in most cases they're in prison for life, and they're on lockdown 23 hours a day in their cell, and they get to go outside for an hour maybe.
It's probably the best thing.
And they come back in, and like if they got to see a bird even out of a window, that's like the talk of the day. They're like, well, what did the bird look like? Like, can you describe the bird? What was it doing? And down to the very last detail, it's about this bird that they've seen, and they probably haven't seen anything for weeks.
Studied the crap out of it.
Yeah. So when you strip yourself away of all of, or somebody assists you in stripping away all of these distractions and these things that we do from the day to day, we're on our phone, we're at work, we're doing this and that, all of those minute details that you miss throughout the day start to come through.
Yeah. And I think
slow down.
And I think that's the point of why they do that. It's not to be cruel in any way. They even say, don't hold any pictures of any gurus or anything. Don't mix anything. Just give it a chance, because they just want you to see the clear nakedness of consciousness, that the stuff that's just right here all the time that you have access to.
Why
That
can't we do that on our own, though? Why do we have to be forced into a cell and
yeah,
meditate for 8 hours a day before
yeah.
we realize the bird in the sky or the grass blade?
So I think we have I think it's coming at us collectively, society wise. Well, one is coming at us this way, and then also we're conditioned from inside to work with it, and it just happens in that way. So when we go back, work calls for us to be on our phones, to some of us have to be on Instagram because our business is on Instagram, it just happens so naturally. And then also when you think of conditioning that has happened since we were kids, we were told you got to get to first grade, you got to get to second grade, hurry up, get to third, like hurry up, fourth, like this is the most important thing, you got to get to do it, you got to do this, you got to do that. And we've just been conditioned also from inside that we have other things to focus on, freaking health insurance and getting a secure job. We really, no one ever taught us to go smell the flowers and how cool they were. Maybe some of us, but it's just not, especially in our country, really given space to do so. I think I used to get 30 minutes for recess at school, and it was
Yeah.
like a 6 hour day, and then you had homework at home, and then you went to bed and you did it all over again. For how many years did we do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think I remember being a kid, and, I think we're lucky enough to grow up in a world where there weren't cell phones just yet. And I was very much spending most of my time in nature. I wouldn't come home for days.
And I think that's why these retreats can come as such a shock. And that's why there are these warnings. If you're prone to anxiety, if you're prone to depression, which I am, coming from my childhood and some things that I have experienced. So I was hesitant, and it certainly came up full force. But I did have a meditative awareness, which I think helped me because I do teach yoga and I do teach and practice a little bit of meditation. So I think I just had faith in that. Like, there's something else I can rely on right now. And I know it's not my mind,
Mm.
but I can imagine why people freak out and want to leave, because it certainly, happened to me. We don't have all the things that we normally rely on. Even journaling, I could see why they asked us not to do that, because we just write our experiences and we're like, oh, I had this amazing experience. Oh, I had this terrible experience. And you're not really supposed to hold on to anything. I actually lost a lot of insight that I had because I couldn't write anything down.
Yeah. I had this journal. It's a 5 year, one line a day for 5 years. And I got 3 years into it, and I got to recall what was happening 1 year ago today, 2 years ago today, 3 years ago today. And it was starting to bother me, like, to see, because I was writing I would write basically what happened that day and whether it was a good day or a bad day. And I was like, why do I want to recall this? What what does it matter
To keep it.
to keep on hanging on to it and to be reminded again and then again and like what was going on at that period of time in my life? And I stopped. Yeah, I stopped on year 3, and I was like, I don't need to know these things anymore.
It's just these subtle ways that our minds try to grasp and hold on to something that just can't be grasped. It's something that had happened during that time or that day, and you wrote it down to record it, cool. But now it's a new day the next day, and something else is happening. And then 3 years later, completely different person, something else is happening. So it's sort of like that, when that realization happens that you will be continuously growing and changing, there is really no desire to hold on to how things were.
There was also a forced recollection, right? So like I'm going to write down every day what's happening. And by doing that, I would have to open up this page and see it, right? But you
Yeah.
can journal and never look at the thing ever again. You won't go back 4 years or whatever for what you journaled if you don't want to. That was like strange for me that I couldn't decide whether or not I wanted to recall those things there,
I also think in the retreat, because I remember many moments of wanting to write down, oh, I got to write this insight down. I understood it for the negative experiences. I'm like, I don't want to remember these. It's fine. I don't have to journal them. They're not that cool. I don't want to ever experience them again. But the positive ones I was attached to, I really wanted to write those down and remember the really good times. And the cool part about Vipassana, because I didn't mention this part, but the first 3 days is Anapana, watching the nose, the breath. And then the rest of the time is Vipassana meditation, which is scanning sensations in your body, whether they're unpleasant or pleasant. You're not supposed to crave or have aversion.
Physical?
Physical, mental, emotional, anything that comes up. So anything unpleasant that comes up, you're not supposed to push it away. It just is arising. Everything is a nitya. Everything is changing. So this is all the teaching in 5 seconds is all it was on repeat. Everything is changing phenomenally. Everything is a nitya. So even something like an itch, they encouraged you to allow it to arise, focus on the sensation of the breath or scan the body, Vipassana, and don't place any focus on things that are happening because then the mind will go to that. Keep it here. It will come up and it will pass. I did practice it on itches because they're the worst for me. I like always just automatically scratch and it does go away. So I'm like, oh, okay, let's see if these thoughts will also arise and pass. Let's see if this emotion that's really strong will arise and pass. It does stay for some time, some longer than others, but it does always pass. Your legs are not going to fall off. There are parts of the mind where, oh my God, if I sit in this position for any longer, I'm going to die. It's more the mind, maybe, but it's more the mind that's making it a huge problem when really it's just a sensation happening. When that can be understood, there are no problems. So I think the hard part for me was not even craving the good things. I was having experiences where I was feeling like electricity in the body and I wanted to write them down and I was having all these visuals, but I also had to let those go too. And I think that was harder than, maybe not harder, but it was also as difficult as not having aversion to the difficult emotions and the mind storms.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
acknowledging that even positive thoughts and feelings and emotions are fleeting.
Mm-hmm.
We always want to grasp onto those things.
Yeah, I think positive thinking is a step, but it's not it. Because I think one of my teachers said before, positive thinking is just rearranging furniture in a room. You can replace it with nicer furniture, but you still are locked in a room. It's like a golden chain. And it certainly is a step, and it's better than being depressed or anxious. It can alleviate and get you out of a hole, but it's not ultimate reality. Is just positive thinking. You are the observer of your thoughts.
No, I would say that it more appropriate is positive action that causes you to feel a certain way more often. If you want to feel, better about your body, well, you spend more time taking care of your body, be it physically, diet, whatever, mental meditation, like if you spend more time meditating, you're probably going to feel a little bit better about things. You couldn't even stretch?
Well, I stretched. There were some things I just...
Do they have cameras in there?
No, they have no cameras. God. They would see me be a nutcase in there. To me, being a nut in my room kind of reminded me. I had clothespins to dry my clothes. Got like halfway. No, I think I was on day 3, which is wild. That's not halfway. You fucking have 7 more days after that. You have a whole week. I took the clothespins because I didn't have a calendar or any way to write anything down, and I slid them over every day that I passed, and I'd count and I'd go over it. I'm like, all right, 6 more days. And then I couldn't wait to the next day to slide one over. That was the joy of my day.
Yeah. How creative you can get with when you remove things that you have at your disposal,
Yeah. So got a little white piece of paper on my meditation pillow to assign me to a meditation cell, the pagoda cell, which we'll put a pin in that. We'll talk about that. I kept that piece of paper. I took the wooden clothespin, the corner of it, and I scratched into it things that I wanted to remember and tell people. So I did make like a
against the rules. That's journaling.
It definitely was against the rules. But it was just like, tell mom or whatever, go 4-leaf clover hunting with friends when you get home. Really dumb. I just had to write them down.
Yeah.
So I did do that. But other than that, I didn't journal or anything. But that was really creative. I was proud of myself. I I could see how people in jail come up with some gnarly things.
Yeah, they're very creative in there. Oh no. Intermission.
Okay, okay.
I have a couple of questions actually, but I guess first being like, so you get to day 10. What happens? Is there a talk? You get to talk to anyone? Do you
Yeah,
get to share your experience with anyone other
yeah.
that went through it as well? A party with with sandwiches at the end,
I
or
mean, kind of. It feels like a party just to talk. But at day 10 ends up being completely different. Your last day of silence is actually day 9, so I didn't know that. Day 10 is when you can talk after the first group meditation. I get outside, everyone kind of looks around at each other, and we don't even know what to say. And then we just start chatting. Socialization at first felt really uncomfortable, as you can imagine. Didn't know what to say or if I made any sense.
mm,
I was kind of hyper aware of my speech because I had been locked in my body the whole time.
yeah,
But I just blurted everything that happened, and everyone was just doing the same thing. Connected and bonded really well. I am part of a group chat now, and we're all going to try to keep in touch and possibly, if it comes up, to meet each other again. Everyone had some pretty incredible experiences, although it did seem like I was the only one having a bad time because I kept hearing people say, my experience was so great. I was having a great time. Everything was great. And of course, that is what I picked up on. But there were definitely some people that I was having a hard time. There was one woman who would smile at me, even though you're not supposed to. But she would smile at me during the
why
trail
not?
walk. You can smile, I'm sure it's fine, but you're just not supposed to really look at anyone to distract them. You're supposed to just be locked into your
Mm.
experimental body. But this woman would pass me every time we went on a walk for our recess, and she would smile at me, and I fucking hated it. I realized, what the fuck? I have not even talked to her yet. I don't know anything about her. And I could just watch my mind get so angry and create this entire image for this woman who was smiling at me simply because I was having a hard time midweek. It seemed like she was having a great time. That, like, you're faking it. You're not really in touch with your emotions. I was coming up with all sorts of stories to just judge this woman that I didn't even know. Funny thing is, she came immediately up to me when we were able to talk, and she was like, "You helped me so much. You were such a guided light when I saw you meditate. You helped me through my process somehow without even knowing it." I was
Did you tell her I
no,
hate
I
you?
didn't. I felt bad. But it just goes to show nothing can be happening and your mind can just make shit up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep. Times 80%, 90% of the time. That's all I would see was just stories being played, the past, the future, things that I have done wrong that I thought I did wrong in the past. And it was just constant.
Nothing is ever as bad as we make it out to be prior to it happening. So tell me about this
Pagoda
pagoda
cell.
cell.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to go
Sounds
next.
intense. It
So it
might have
was.
actually been in a tent.
The old students that have done this before had the option of being in the pagoda cell the whole time. We got assigned one day to do it just to see what it was like. The meditation teacher brought me in prior to her room to talk. I thought I was in trouble. She's like, "You were expressing some anxiety. I just want to let you know that the pagoda cell can heighten some of those feelings. Sensations will be high in there. Know that you could take a break. You don't have to do it." And I'm like, "Cool, thank you. Like, I want to try."
Mm-hmm.
The night before the pagoda cell, this is really actually pivotal. My best friend passed in October. I knew that some of that stuff would probably come up just because it happened so suddenly, so soon. It was part of the reason why I was unsure about going to this retreat. I thought it'd be too strong. I woke up in the middle of the night around 3:30. This is about the 8th day, and the gong rings at 4. So I woke up at 3:30. In between 3:30 and 4, I had a vivid dream of Alicia visiting me in the dream. I saw her full face, her nose ring, her eyes, her eyebrows. I smelled her fucking hair. She gave me a huge hug. I was at a breakfast place, which looking back makes sense. We'd go to breakfast all the time. Her song playing over the intercom, and or intercom. Am I old? speakers. That was a song I had showed her that her and I really connected on. It was a very moody song. Didn't realize that in the dream though. I'm like, oh, I love this song. Play it louder. Very slow motion. And dramatically, I turn around from the bar in this dream and she enters from the left. And she's wearing a white shirt, black pants. I see her fully. Don't realize I'm really dreaming. Hug her. She nuzzles her nose into me and I feel it. And then she gives me kind of like a contempt smile, kind of like, I know it sucks. She kept walking. She walked into a misty white light. It was like total, even more slow motion. I'm grabbing her arm as she's leaving. No, 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 don't go. Crying. And I said, I love you, I love you, I love you. She just kept walking. I saw the back of her just disappear. Woke up to the gong, woke up, and I'm in fetal position, just fucking bawling my eyes out. So go into the cell and I just spend the entire morning just fucking crying. I turn the lights off. I don't want the lights on. I don't want anything. Close the fucking door. I'm going to be with myself during this moment. It seemed like I got all of these download images of every time. It started off with her, but every time I had spent time with her at dinner, we'd love going out to eat. We were huge foodies. We'd travel, we'd hike, and I was either on my phone or I was rushing. And it was being shown to me all the times I had felt guilty for not being present with her. But it just felt I was realizing, damn, I truly could have been more present in that friendship. And then all of the other relationships and friendships were shown to me all the times I lashed out at someone, was really rude, just made human mistakes.
Or a complete stranger gives you a content smile and you write them off.
And I write them off. Yeah. You know, I come from a Catholic background and I had a large push away from how the religion formulates, but it did feel like I was reaching a core level of human sin. It was really lovely placed. It was just like, here's all the things. Do you want to keep living life that way? People can die tomorrow suddenly. You could lose anyone at any moment, and that's what death teaches us. I have never had someone that close to me die. So when I sat with it, I was truly accepting she's not on a long vacation. She's gone. Mm. And the last thing she said to me 10 minutes before passing away was a text message. I love you so much. Can't wait to see you in a week, because I was going to fly to see her in Connecticut back at home. I just want to let you know you mean so much to me. I think subconsciously I just felt like I never said I love you back. And that's why in that dream it was so significant and symbolic. I was grabbing her and I'm like, I love you. No, don't go. Those downloads the next day in the cell, I was just in fetal position. The cell was just really deep, pivotal moment for me. I felt vulnerable. I'm like, forgive me for I don't know what I'm doing. Then I realized I think Jesus said that on the cross. He didn't say but he said they don't know what they're doing when he was crucified. And so I kind of just had that moment of, this is a human experience that's happening right now. I guess I experienced original sin, or thinking that I'm separate or that I'm doing things wrong. Really, there is no error in the game. Kind of just all of that coming together and forgiving myself, because at the time I was just doing my best.
It's very Catholic.
Very Catholic.
Outlook.
I know. I had so much Catholic guilt come up. It was so strange. Really embedded from childhood. I think I felt a ton of relief after the pagoda cell. I actually wasn't as anxious.
So after all of those experiences and all of that, are there like tools that you walked away with that you think are affecting you now, or that you utilize now that you're back with all of the
stuff,
the dogs and the Instagram emails and the rent?
I think the way that I was relating to other people and life was coming from a place of angst, and my head really appeared things I have to do and lists. It feels like now that there's a bigger trust that if I just kind of let go, that I can also be happy and just trust that everything's gonna kind of work out. I know that's very cliche, but I was able to one-on-one experience that in my body, even amidst really, really dark storms in the body, physically shaking. I was still able to find moments of peace by watching the breath in my nose. I was having these little gaps that turned into bigger gaps. So in one way, it's, well, I went through hell already and I made it out fine. It feels like nothing compares to that. So there's a lot more ease. There has been a large integration with socialization. I feel less of a need to do things that don't serve me, and not so much coming from a place of thinking about it, but just letting it happen and not grip the wheel so much. There's just this cracking open. It seems pretty dramatic, to be honest. Everything is changing. I saw myself worry so much, and I saw how much energy it fucking took out of my body to worry about the future and the past. It took up 90% of my brain space with no distraction. So I just can't afford that. And all of that energy could be harnessed in creativity and
actionable
things.
Or versus thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time you think about it, one step out from doing the actual things.
Yeah. And I've certainly gotten caught in this cyclical, thought patterns of like, well, if I do it this way, what's going to happen? Or if I do it that way, what's going to happen? Yeah. This happens, or what if that happens?
Your brain can't possibly know. And my brain did that
can't.
too.
And at the end of the day, you just got to pick a direction and feel what it feels like. And then you'll know if you made the right choice or not, and you redirect again.
That's why there aren't any errors. I think I was so stuck on wrong choice, if I made it, and then I would just stay in the same spot and I wouldn't make a decision, which felt worse because it felt like this ocean or this big wave of water that was trying to push through a door and I was just blocking it. Whereas if I just let it happen, I pick one, then I find my answer through doing that. But I watched my brain the whole time think of all these solutions and do math. If I go back home and I change this, or if I do this and then that, maybe I'll feel better. And I don't know until I do it and I try. And I'm just going to drive myself fucking mad, fucking sick, which I saw my brain do to my body. I would have a thought that would be a worried thought and my stomach would go. Just couldn't afford to lose or expend that energy. So I have just more faith and trust that when I came back home, everything was going to fall into place because it is what it is. There is no other way besides making those choices and trying it out.
Would you recommend people try it?
Try Vipassana?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that everyone should at least try it once if they feel, I think the only hesitation is that I had a traumatic event happen right before. So it was a little, if it wasn't for the background in yoga and meditation, I'm not sure I would have been able to have faith that I can make it through. But I think that if someone feels good enough to go in, I think it's really beneficial for every single person. There isn't a specific person that couldn't benefit from it. It's very universal. It's just using your own body, using your own self as an experiment to come back to the present moment. Complete?
I'd say so.
Tee.
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 Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.